And so at some point in my relationship with God, I understood that there were men somewhere out there. I hadn't seen them yet. I had never laid eyes on them, but they were men that were supernaturally equipped to take good care of a woman's heart. And so I think at the back of my mind, I knew that this mentality was not in line with my new belief, but I still continued to date without the intention of getting married. Now, someone might say, Melody, what did that look like? So this video is not scripted. I am busy cooking dinner and I thought I should sit down and do a story time about why I did not want to get married. Hi guys, welcome to my channel, Melody here. Thank you so much for the reception that you have given to my How I Met My Husband video. I really love telling stories, and if I had more time, I would tell more stories. And I've just realized, you know, I could actually film a video while I'm cooking. I could find a way to incorporate these type of storytime videos into my evening schedule after work. So really pray for me so that I do more of these storytime videos, because I actually quite enjoy doing these storytime videos. So we're going to be talking about why I did not want to get married. Growing up, you know how girls say that they always dreamt about their wedding dress, they always dreamt about their wedding day, they always dreamt of how many kids they would have, or they you know, when you're playing house, you want to be the mother of the house. I don't recall ever being that child. I don't recall ever being super excited about marriage. I don't ever recall really thinking through getting married or wanting or desiring to get married. It's not something that I really aspired for. And I can look back and think of, you know, the times when I was young, and I would think of, oh my goodness, you know, what am I going to be when I grow up? What kind of profession am I going to be in? You know, how much money am I going to make? What kind of car am I going to drive? What kind of a house am I going to live in? Those are my early childhood thoughts. I don't remember ever aspiring for marriage. And I think a lot of that was shaped from the fact that growing up, I had not really had an opportunity to see successful marriages. I had not had an opportunity to see marriages that worked, marriages that were admirable, marriages that were desirable, and marriages that were inspiring. So I just thought that marriage was an institution that was deeply, deeply unfair, specifically to the female gender. I had seen a lot of women that had been married, and for some reason, when we talk about sacrifice in marriage, it always had to be the women that sacrificed. It always had to be the women that paid the higher price in marriage. Whether it related to, you know, giving up school, or related to giving up their bodies to have babies, giving up their careers, giving up their lives to literally take up someone else's vision, you know, and completely disappear for someone else's vision to flourish. A lot of the marriages in the previous generations that we've seen, I think some of you can testify, have really, really showed that type of dynamic and power. There hasn't been a lot of marriages like from our previous generation, and the previous generations were like even worse. They just wasn't a fair power dynamic in marriage. And so I really never aspired to it. And mind you, I was not yet born again. I did not know the Lord. This is me. I'm in primary school. And all I'm thinking about is, you know, God has given me a mind, you know, and I know for a fact that I'm going to become an exceptional professional somewhere, somehow, you know, as I'm growing up. And so those are my early childhood thoughts about marriage. I really didn't think about marriage at all. I was just thinking about passing at school and getting a good job so I could get a nice house and a nice car. As we go through my life journey, that mentality continued to be enforced by the things I kept seeing around me, when it came to marriages and when it came to women that were married, the level at which they just kept sacrificing and giving of themselves and literally bleeding for others to have something to drink, literally cutting out portions of themselves for people to have food to eat. Women have literally sacrificed themselves on platters throughout so many different generations. And I just was not willing to be a part of that statistic. And so for a very long time, I thought to myself, I was never going to get married. I started dating way later in life. I think I started dating after high school. That's when I really had my first ever guy friend. And one of the biggest reasons why I had that guy friend is because this guy had pursued me for like a couple of years. And that continued to be the trait with many of, listen to me saying many, like I've dated a million guys. That continued to be the trait with the people that I dated. Like, you had to chase me for like a year. You know what I mean? You had to, the least you could chase me was a year. It just, like, I wasn't open to relationships. And the first guy that I dated was, okay, you've kind of been at this for a couple of years. Let's just see what it feels like to date. I was not serious about that relationship. I was very guarded in that relationship. I'm grateful for that because it protected me. I was young. I was very, my eyes were very open in that relationship, and I was determined that I was not going to be a statistic. Neither was I going to give more than I did not feel like I needed to give in that relationship. So this constituted my first relationship ever. And even in that relationship, I did not want to get married. Now, sometime around that time, I encounter God. I become a Christian and I get saved. And it was one of the most confusing seasons of my journey because I have this life principle that I'm living with. I don't intend on getting married. I don't intend on having children. At this point now, I know that God certainly likes marriage. And he is excited to see people get married. And so I started to experience these contradictions. I still continued to say that I was not willing to get married, and yet still God was doing a work in my heart and teaching me how to love, teaching me what love looked like, teaching me what unconditional love looked like, teaching me what love that sacrifices looked like, teaching me that this was the exact same love, the love that he poured out to the church was the exact same love that a man needed to love his wife with. And so at some point in my relationship with God, I understood that there were men somewhere out there. I hadn't seen them yet. I had never laid eyes on them, but they were men that were supernaturally equipped to take good care of a woman's heart. It was a long journey. It was a journey of a lot of healing. It was a journey of unlearning a lot of my personal mental barricades that I'd created for myself, barricades that had protected me for a very long time. And so I think at the back of my mind, I knew that this mentality was not in line with my new belief, but I still continued to date without the intention of getting married. Now, someone might say, Melody, what did that look like? So essentially, when I was dating you, first of all, I was not willing to give more than you were giving me. I was not willing to give more than you were giving me because remember, in my head, women always sacrificed more than men in relationships. And I did not want to set that precedent in dating because God forbid we ended up in marriage and I was the one that was giving more than you were giving. And so I was always detached. I was always emotionally, there was always a certain portion of my heart that I was unwilling to give. This continued to manifest in small things like initiating communication. I would just not initiate communication. If you don't want to talk to me on that day, nobody's going to talk to nobody. It was in initiating dates. You're the guy, you need to initiate the dates. It was in things like apologizing. I just would never apologize. You know, if you still want to be in this relationship, you're gonna apologize. You're gonna have to say sorry. And so what would end up happening is that in my early relationships, the guys would end up compromising more, and there would be very little reciprocation from my side because I was not truly, my heart was not open. My heart was not open to fully loving. I always kept portions, a lot of big portions of my heart to myself because I just believed that there was a lot of pain and a lot of hurt when it came to relationships. Let me go check out my pot. I'm coming back right now. Guys, I'm cooking a mean looking oxtail and I really love the way it's looking. Can't wait. Yeah, I love food. So my needs were always more important than the other person's needs in my early relationships. And this was largely because initially I didn't want to date. Okay, so now we're dating. It's going to be on my terms. And I think that this is synonymous with a lot of people that have a lot of issues when it comes to marriage, and a lot of issues basically when it comes to the relationships that they have seen around them. If you have experienced and you have observed a lot of relationships where which are not healthy, relationships between married people which are very unfair in their structure and in the way in which they are governed, relationships which are not being run under godly covering and godly love, godly submission, you will literally think that good marriages do not exist. And so this continued to be my mentality. After high school, I come to varsity, and I can say that this was the first time that I actually dated somebody that broke those walls, And I really believe that in every girl's life, especially women that don't want to get married, or Christian women that don't want to get married, there is always somebody that God sends into your life. It might not even be your husband. And that's the funny thing about it. Somebody that comes into your life that starts to create a foundation that will help you understand that good men do exist. And God will use that person to break certain walls that you have built around you. And that person will be used to prove that good men exist. And that person they're just there for an assignment. And that assignment is to redefine what love can look like. And I met and encountered that person at university. And for the whole of my undergrad, I kind of dated this person. They were God-fearing. They loved the Lord tons. I grew quite a lot in that relationship, in my love for Jesus Christ. It was a godly relationship, and I experienced a lot of God. Now, I'm going to come back here and tell you, interestingly, how this one ended, because it was so divine. It was literally divine. Had it not been God, I would have never been able to discover some of the things that were happening in the background. Because girl, you know stuff happens in the background sometimes. If it really wasn't God's timing for us to separate because the job was done, that person's assignment in my life was now complete. Had it not been the Holy Spirit literally revealing certain things, I would have probably, continued in that relationship for a lot longer. But I believe that God really restructured my mentality around marriage. And for the first time, in me actually dating that person for 4 years. At the end of those 4 years, we were planning on getting married, and I was comfortable with it. I was okay with it. I was happy with it. I believed that I could coexist with somebody that truly, truly knew me in all my shenanigans, in all my craziness, in all my mess, in all my brokenness, in all of me, and still accepted me unconditionally. And there was a lot of healing that took place in my heart through that relationship. And let me know in the comment section below if you've ever encountered something like this. You know, I'm not talking about your husband. You don't even need to be married. You could be single, but you've encountered somebody that has taught you what love should look like and what love shouldn't have to look like. And in many instances, these people teach you what love should have to look like. So now when they don't love you right, you also know what love shouldn't have to look like. It's very interesting. So now after varsity, I've kind of warmed up to this concept that marriage doesn't have to be crazy. Marriage doesn't have to be, I've got words that are wanting to come out of my mouth that I'm not going to say, of course, but marriage shouldn't have to hurt. Marriage shouldn't have to be one-sided sacrifice. Marriage shouldn't have to be compromised just from one individual. One person shouldn't have to want a marriage to work. I realize that you could be with somebody that is as equally excited about you as you are about them, and somebody that was willing to prove to you that they were worthy of that kind of love. And because I had also spent the past 4 years really growing in the Lord and growing in my calling, I realized that God had designed marriage, that God had ordained marriage, that God kept marriages, that God was able to sustain marriages, and God desired for me to get married. And there came a point in my ministry where I acknowledged that even though I, as Melody, was content not being married, even I, as Melody, being completely comfortable with leaving alone and pursuing ministry and God alone, and pursuing my career and the things that God has laid over my heart alone, that there came a point in time when I felt a great demand for my call to be covered by a husband. That's a word for somebody right there. There came a time when I realized that my ministry needed a covering, and it needed a covering in the form of a husband. And I think that's why I want to believe my marriage with my husband has such a sanctity and sacredness about it, and a beauty, because I acknowledge that he came at a time when my ministry needed covering. You know, I remember the Lord literally saying to me, you know, you could do without, but your ministry couldn't do without. It needed a covering. It now needed to be covered. It now needed to be under. And I love that a lot about my marriage, because it has covered me. It has covered me in a very powerful and beautiful way. And I'm eternally grateful to God for my husband. So I got to this point where I realized and I acknowledged that I was ready. I was ready for marriage. I was ready for marriage. And so I started to pray for myself, started to pray for my husband. I would sow seed for my future husband. We've got friends that we partner with in ministry in terms of finances. And I would pay for myself, and I would pay for my future husband when I didn't even have a name, you know, for my future husband. And this has been the type of faith that I have exercised as I have been in waiting. And I have seen the hand of God throughout that wait. So through this video, I'm hoping that I can kind of have a conversation with some women that love the Lord, women that are in church, and women that say, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in marriage. You know, I'm super big on I'm super big on allowing people to be ready for something like marriage and not feeding people a hunger and an appetite for marriage, because I really believe that only God can do that for you. And I highly respect people who are still currently at a place in their lives where they are just not interested in marriage. I know that there are certain churches where if you're not interested in marriage and you're a woman, they will say that you're demon possessed. They will say that you have issues. God will give you that desire in his own timing. And I believe that it is a supernatural desire that God gives to people. And I also believe that there are certain people who don't need to get married, and that there is a unique grace over their lives to still live lives of purity, even outside of marriage. And I believe that if God is still working in your heart, healing certain wounds, changing certain mindsets about marriage, allowing you to encounter good examples of men, removing the stench that has been inflicted over your spirit by counterfeits that came and misrepresented what good men should look like. I believe that that's a process and that's a journey that should be respected. It should be given space. It should be given time. And if you have friends who are like this, stop asking them when they're getting married. Stop asking people when they're getting married. It's not fair. It's not fair for us to demand of people what they do not desire for themselves yet, what God has not given them a hunger for yet. Allow people to heal, allow people to grow, allow people to be processed by God in their inner man. And for some women that are watching me right now, I'm hoping that this video can be an encouragement to you, that I know that sometimes the enemy is hard-bent on making sure that he surrounds you with all the wrong examples of what a man should look like or what a husband should look like in the context of marriage. And a lot of you have seen so many painful things around you. Some of you have seen these through your aunts, through your sisters, through your brothers, the relationships around you. Some of you through the people that are the closest to you, relationships that really did not reflect Jesus' relationship to the church. I pray that God would begin to process you for your own personal season of marriage. And this is not me trying to feed you a hunger for marriage. I'm saying in the rightful season, God will process you and get you equipped and ready for marriage if marriage is a call for you. And I'm hoping that this video has been a video that is useful, a video that is encouraging, and a video that is helpful, but most importantly, a video that somebody can relate to. And if you have found and seen bits and pieces and portions of yourself in my personal journey, please let me know in the comment section below. And a lot of times the question I get is, Melody, how do you manage to stay pure in these relationships? How do you manage to stay pure in those relationships? I'm trying to create a video on that because I do appreciate that purity is a stronghold in our generation. And maybe I'll also cook a meal while I sit here and chat to you guys as well. I'm super grateful I did this video. Thank you so much for all the views in the previous video. Share this with somebody that you know needs it. And let's grow together. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next story time. Bye.